Okay, hi. So I'm Mike. Thanks for the introduction. I'm going to be talking about the speed of concurrency. And so a little bit about that, where I want to start out with is it's doing something weird, just a second. It's coming alive. See, this is why we test everything, right? Okay, here we go. That's me. Okay, so I'm going to start out with a great big huge thanks, because I wouldn't be up here on this stage today if the many people out there in the world that helped get me to this point of being able to talk to you guys about what I do and to share my knowledge with you guys to help you pursue solving the problems that you need to solve. So basically what I'm thanking is all of those people out there in the open source world that have donated their time and energy and efforts or whatever to help me get to be successful, to be standing up here today. So thank you for all of those people out there that do the open source stuff. Okay? So my agenda today is what we're looking for. Introduction. You're going to learn a little bit about me. Have some fun, I hope. We're going to go through a little journey about where I've gotten to as far as getting to be up here on the stage. I'm going to give you some live demo stuff. We'll try that out, see how it goes. We'll do some stats, and then we'll have some questions. So basically, who am I? My talk today is talking about testing at the speed of concurrency. But to be able to talk about concurrency, I live multiple lives. In my personal life, I'm a father, and I concurrently work with my children and my wife, who's lovingly here supporting me today, so thank you for that. But I'm a father first, and this is a picture of me. I'm also a runner. I'm a marathoner. I ran 2 marathons in my life. I don't know if I'll do another one. Maybe not. This is actually a picture of me and my boys out for a run. I've started a goal this year to run at least a mile a day for every day of the year, starting January 1. Today I'm excited to announce that I ran this morning to get some nervous jitters out. I ran 2 miles this morning. I was 158 days in to my goal for this year. And this run was actually really fun because if you guys are familiar with Mario Kart, and when you get the green turtle shells that spin around you while you're driving, this run was like that for me with my 3 boys on their Razor scooters being chaotic as I'm going, don't go into the road. I'm also a big advocate for the Utah Foster Care Foundation. This is another side of me that I participate in my personal life, and my professional life allows me to do this type of stuff. My 3 boys are all adopted, and I'm a big advocate for the Utah Foster Care Foundation. Thirdly, I'm a troublemaker. I'm proud of this title. Because the reason why I'm a troublemaker is because in my perspective in the QA world, or in the engineering world or whatever, as a QA person, I have to point out problems. And I have to be okay with pointing out those problems. And so I'm okay with being a troublemaker. And so when I saw this was actually an email that went around through my system where I'm employed. And when it came through, I laughed out loud because I love that this is actually a perception of me out there because I'm a most feared QA member. Okay, that's fine. I work, I do that, it's my job. I'm okay with that title. So, Millgate House rule number 1, have fun. And so I hope that you guys have some fun today, and I'm going to be showing some things that I think will be interesting and expressing the house, or expressing or showing the ways of this house rule number 1. Millgate House rule number 1 is have fun. And to be able to have fun, you have to work hard. And this is something that I'm trying to instill into my boys is it's okay to play, but you also need to work. And if you work, you can play more. So along the ways of my travels of doing what I'm doing, there's this hashtag that's running out there that's test all things. And because I kind of have weird OCD behaviors, and I like to point out things and see a variety of things, these are things that I've stumbled upon in my life, personal life and professional life, in testing things. And because I'm a tester, they stand out to me. And what this is telling me is what we do as an industry is not going away, and it's very valuable. I really liked what Jonathan Lips talked about today as far as automation and where it's going and stuff like that. And the line in his song about the robots that's going to digest me. I thought that was actually quite interesting tie into what, as an organization, that we're doing here. So part of one of my fun little habits that I like to do is I experience life and I see these random errors coming through. So failures in the financial industry, failures in the gaming industry as I go through casinos or video game places, commercial industry, calling out all of the different changes that we see. Things that we interact with in our daily lives that we develop or we test or we experience that we trust that somebody like us or you guys out there are doing to help ensure that the stability of the things that we work with in an automation fashion. We have problems in the government. These are some of the things I show are minor, typos, various other things, but this all sort of affects the end user's experience in one way or another. In the airline industry, this was a fun one I saw. I was traveling to Austin for the Selenium conference, and this was blaring on one of the airport monitors in the airport, and I thought, wow, that's fun. We see it in the commercial software industry. I pick on Sauce Labs a lot. It's my job. I like to pick on them. Just issues that I ran into while using Sauce Labs along the way. And this last one I'm showing is one of my favorites that I came up with, not me, but one that I ran into recently as I was prepping to become a Mac user and reformatting it and things like that. This is a dialog box that pops up in your Mac, and there was a grammatical typo error in there. And I found it to be quite interesting to see. So I live by a few mantras. Fail, and fail often, and learn from your mistakes. So again, I wouldn't be up here talking to you if I'm not willing to talk about my mistakes. So this is a fun one that I like to communicate with my resources that I work with, my coworkers and things like that. When I started out, I wrote a method that we used in our automation framework internally that its job is to test if a column was sorted. Pretty simple thought process, easy thing to do. This was in a VB script language at the time for the toolset that we were using. And so I wrote this method. It's dated in there, 2006, somewhere around there. I had created this method, and we had used it. Prior to that, I think this was the latest version that I had seen when I was gathering data for this. We were using it prior to 2006, but when we rewrote some stuff, this was when it was rewrote. There was a bug in there. So its job is column sorted. Its job was to validate that everything was sorted when we select a column in the table. The problem was I did all this fancy logic inside to make sure that we were dealing with names or data types of doubles or true booleans or whatever. It was doing all this fancy logic. At the very end, I was throwing all of that away, regardless, taking all this process time, and I was just always returning true, regardless of what was doing. So we had been using this to validate our testing for several months, almost a year, I think, and it was always failing. Well, it was always passing, but it should have been failing when it should have been. We assessed what was going on. It's a fun story that I like to tell because when I work with people, sometimes they are intimidated by me, and I'm not sure why. But it's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay to fail, and it's okay to learn from it. And that's something I'm trying to teach my boys as well. So professional and personal, we get it, kind of the pathways here. So another one of my mantras is see, try, ask, learn, and share. And this monkey is one of my favorites, this chimpanzee, I guess. He's sort of my logo for the internal framework that I use within Optum to test the stuff that I do. And you'll see a little bit of that in a little bit. This is another thing. This is one of my final kind of mantras for the day. Quality is a team effort. And there is no I in team, but there is in quality.
Not that one.
Good eyes. There is. I'm testing you. You got to test everything, right? Funny story with that. So Sauce Labs had some old t-shirts that I've acquired from going to conferences or whatever, and it's the test all things hashtag that they use. And I had that shirt on yesterday as I was traveling to the conference. And an older gentleman made a comment to me while we were standing in line to go through the security check. And I could see that he was looking at me and glancing at the shirt and reading it and thinking and coming up with something. And he said to me, he looked at me and he said, "You're not living life if you're doing that." And I thought, that's an interesting perspective, because for me to be able to live life, it's my job to test everything. And I do it and I love it. And it allows me to have the life that I'm participating in. And it allows me to experience my boy's life as well. So what I'm going to talk about is my journey to get me to here. I'm going to show you some of the stuff that we've done along the way. But to be able to do that, as I'm noticing sort of a theme going on, to be able to show you where we're at, we got to start at the beginning. So my beginnings, I started, in 1994. For some of you, I'm taking you way back. Some of you are like, what? Come on. 1994, I took my very first college class, and it was called Intro to the Internet. I learned how to write HTML code, I think. It might have been then. It might have just been, hey, this is how you use IE. So the Intro to the Internet class in 1994, which has kind of led me to where I'm standing up here today. In 2002, I started my career with Optum. So as as Terry mentioned, I've been there for 15 years. I just hit my anniversary last month, 15 years. So in 2002, I started at Optum. In 2006, iStar was born. So iStar is an internal framework that I created. It's an acronym that stands for Nginx Strategic Testing and Automation for Rapid Response. This was in 2006, and this was when I started writing things using VB-script, using the popular tool at the time, which was Quick Test Professional. And I wrote that fun method of is column sorted, and we used it, and things were passing when they shouldn't have been. In 2008, my boss and I were sort of talking about things and trying to come up with strategies to figure out what we wanted to do to be able to test things faster and to really push the systems to figure out if we were doing what we were doing is successful or not. So in 2008, we started exploring the VM world, but before we started getting into the VM world back in the day, we didn't have virtual machines. We had hard devices. We had desktop machines. We had Blade servers in labs and things like that. And I spent early part of my career at Optum sitting in these labs with just them fans blowing, installing software, making images of the applications after we've installed it so that we could ghost them onto other machines. Fun stuff for those that have experienced it. You have like this insane white noise going on through your workday. So he and I were talking. His name's John Reed. He's a great manager. I've actually been reporting to him for quite my whole career, really, at Optum. And he and I were talking about one day, we're like, how can we get our test executions to run faster? And the way that we could come up with that was more machines. Well, at the time, we just had physical devices. We only had 10 machines in our lab that they would allow us to use. But we're exploratory people, and we're going to try to figure out what's going on. And we found that there were these training rooms that we used to teach our customers how to use the product or to train new resources coming on. And we found that these machines were just sitting there in these rooms, not doing anything. And so we thought, perfect. Let's go configure these machines, set them all up. We got them all configured. We thought, great, we're going to run this awesome suite of 50 test cases at once. This is going to be amazing. We got it all installed. Weekend comes. Monday morning, we're going to do this. We come in Monday morning, and something else was concurrently running while we were doing our work. We found out that there was a training session coming on, and they had prepped all the machines through the weekend. So for us to be able to start running our stuff, someone concurrently that we didn't know about had wiped everything out. And we lost our chance to be able to run the VM machine, or the 50 tests all at once. And so we were sad and depressed, and we couldn't do that. And so we just continued forward, doing the measly 10 machines at once. Hard machines. Well, then virtual machines started coming into play. And we started exploring the virtual machines, and we set them up, and we had 10 machines around 2008. Oops, going the wrong direction. In 2010, we started supporting more. We started getting more advanced and trying to understand what we're doing and integrating our QTP tests at the time to be able to run on these multiple machines. 40 machines was actually quite a fun thing to do because, again, we had to have everything configured in a way so things that would work. In 2010, I started exploring the Selenium POC internally to try to figure out, okay, all of these supported VMs that we're doing right now were all QTP-based tests. And I knew that we needed to start exploring cross-browser stuff. And hey, thank you, Jason Huggins, and thank you, Simon Stewart, for taking the time to sort of support us in the open source world and get things going. So I started pursuing it just on my own time to try to figure out what was going on in 2010. In 2011, we were executing around 2,200 QTP tests in our 40 VM environment, and those were running in about 8 hours. You know, not a lot of fun, really, not a lot of parallelization, so to speak, on how we had things set up. But what we were really pushing for, when I say we, me actually, I was really wanting to get tests to execute quickly, and how can we go about doing that? So in 2012, the new framework based on Selenium was born, and that's called Caesar, hence the chimpanzee. Anybody know Caesar?
Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, thank you. Caesar is the first chimpanzee to be able to speak, and so we use Caesar as the automation framework. And we have this weird fascination within our team with monkeys, and so we use monkeys to elaborate what our statuses are on whether the builds were successful or not. It's sort of our fun thing to do. In 2013, this is where my professional and my personal life started kind of going together again. I got the opportunity to be a participant in the healthcare.gov tech surge. And this was an important sort of milestone in my life because when I got there and we started working and figuring out what all the chaos that was going on and how to help solve and fix it, stabilize things for the country, I heard about Jason Huggins was out there somewhere. And I was super excited about this because he's someone that I look up to and as sort of one of my heroes to be able to meet him and work with him. And I found him there, and we worked side by side together in coming up with automation strategies to be able to test the healthcare.gov to help improve the stability of that. And so this is where my personal and professional concurrency of life is sort of merging together. I'm able to do these kind of things from a professional side of things within a personal world as well. So in 2014, as you can kind of tell, I'm sort of goal-oriented, and I like to set goals for myself because it helps you achieve and strive for things. So in 2014, sort of an off-the-cuff goal again with my manager and myself, just talking about things. And seeing some of the stuff that I was sort of starting to achieve in my time while I was at the tech surge for the healthcare.gov, I sort of just off the cuff made this goal, and this is what the goal is. So this is a picture of my chaotic writing. I'm a computer person, I type, I don't write. My penmanship's horrible. But this is a bunch of scribbles that I have on my whiteboard at my desk at this time, 2014. And you can see in the top, right in the top middle part, there's this sort of scribbled mess up there. And this board sun faded over time. But that number that is represented up there, this is a goal that I came up. I wanted to be able to execute 10,000 test cases in 10 minutes. Off the cuff, whatever it is. So I had this goal that's been in my mind for quite some time to sort of figure out what's going on. So I'm still continuing through my journey. In March of 2015, I started exploring the proof of concept for doing an in-house cloud grid, and I was using the Selenium grid for that. So in 2015, I started exploring that internally, and I was supporting this grid myself. I was becoming the bottleneck to my coworkers being able to sustain and support their test executions. We were experiencing a lot of test flake because of environmental issues, and people were starting to doubt the success or the test failures because they weren't app problems, they were automation problems. So I needed some way to start to stabilize that stuff, so we started pursuing a cloud-based vendor. We started looking around. There's a few of them out there, and we landed at Sauce Labs. We did a POC a little bit deeper in with them. We started in with Sauce Labs. In 2016, we started converting over to using Sauce Labs, and it was an easy switch for us because at the time we had an in-house grid, just changed the URL endpoints and a couple of desired capabilities. I'm sure most of you have experienced that. If not, come talk to me afterwards and we can chat about it. In 2016, December, I have had the capabilities to run 996 machines. That's 996 parallel tests, browser-based tests running concurrently. Which brings us here today. Partly the reason why I'm standing up here is because I want to be able to tell my story to you and to explain sort of my experiences so that you can take that knowledge back with you and figure out what it is that you want to do and how to solve your problems in your network. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to be brave a little bit. And I'm going to give you a live demonstration of what I have set up. Okay, so bear with me for a second. I'm going to switch gears. Okay, so part of the pattern that I like to do to be able to kind of demonstrate what's going on is I have this test application that I wrote. Cross your fingers that it's still up because it was down a couple days ago. Okay, so very simplistic application, but it has a flow of what normal applications in the real world sort of experience, right? You have to have some sort of user credentials. So I'm going to go ahead and log in with my highly encrypted passwords. And I get into the application, right? So simple form, I use this application actually as a training device for my internal employees that I work with, my coworkers, to help them sort of get used to the framework, get used to doing Selenium testing, or even we used this back in the day for QTP as well. It just allows us to interact with all the different elements that you would need to deal with, right? So what I'm demonstrating here is in this application, I need to be able to log in, and then I need to do some sort of simple validation. So for the SauceCon demo, I'm going to navigate to this page, and part of that navigation, I'm going to be validating elements on the page to make sure that I'm landing in the right page, right? And then you can see I have 115 different links here, and basically if I click one randomly, whatever, you're just going to navigate to a different page, and I clicked link 88. So that's the basic flow of the test, right, of this particular thing, and then we're going to log out and make sure that that flow successfully works. Okay? So, but what I need you guys to do is I need you to all help me out here and tell me a number between 1 and 150. 142. I have 2. What was it, 42? And at what? 150. Any other takers?
11.
11. Okay. Final vote of those 3. Tell me. 150? 150. Okay. I'm going to pump some output here. Oop. Watch me type. Apparently I can't type today either. Might be too small, huh? Okay. Plus. There we go. Okay, so basically what I've done is the framework that I've written, I use Ruby as my programming language. I have a Ruby script that I'm going to be running this test case that I manually walked you through. I have a switch in there to allow me to run 150 tests. That's what we've chosen to use. Yes. And you're going to see some fun stuff happening. Okay. So before we do that, though, I'm going to switch gears over to here. And I'm going to go into here because I'm actually using Sauce Labs to run my 150. You can see I've been testing things out as my test environment had died. It's fun stuff. Okay, so I'm going to switch gears. We're going to run this. Bear with me. Here we go. Okay, so yay, what's it doing? So let's switch gears a little bit here. Let's share screen. Come on. Okay. So things are starting to run up over here on the left side. Over here on the right. It takes a while for Sauce Labs to start responding to me. Interesting. Look at that. It's only running 2. Okay, so as Sauce Labs is running, we're going to go walk in here. I don't know why it's running 2. That's baffling. That's really weird. Okay, but anyways, so we have 2 tests running. There should be a lot more. Failure. Maybe I have a method out there that says is always true, and it's always running as true. That's fun. Okay, so you can see that the tests are running. I don't know why they're not running more, but okay. So 2. And it's navigating through. And now our test cases are complete. Why I wanted to demonstrate that, it wasn't so cool, was it? Oh! Begin the heckling. Okay, so what happened there? Tests ran, things ran. Why did only 2 tests run? I don't know. Let's try again. Insanity is you keep trying the same thing over and over, right? Oh, I know why. Because I forgot to add in my verbose switch. Okay. Now, the default was to run 2, and I forgot a command. See, I quickly tested my own self right there. Okay, so Sauce Labs is now running my tests, and the UI can't refresh as fast as I can. So see, I'm testing Sauce Labs as I'm doing my talk. You're welcome, Sauce Labs. So we switch over to the automated test. We can see the test cases are running. Things are running, right? So you want to make sure, let's make sure I'm validating. So I'm running tests. But this is what's fun about the particular website that I'm using is it's hosted on a site that doesn't really have a lot of bandwidth. And this is a great demonstration of what the automation can do. And sort of something that Jeremy sort of alluded to is he experienced 404s and he experienced connection timeouts and things like that. Those are my nemesis. For me to be able to run 10,000 test cases in 10 minutes, my application needs to respond fast. And the applications that I test for in real life, they don't respond very fast. And so I'm dealing with performance problems, which is sad for me because I want to be able to run things super, super fast, and my app just can't keep up with what I'm throwing at it. Sauce Labs is being able to sort of accommodate it, but I've also had hurdles with Sauce Labs as well, and I've worked through some of those hurdles using some of the tips and tricks, and I have some of that information for you a little bit later. Okay, so things are running. That's great. Let me switch back to the dashboard. If you haven't seen it before, this is what the dashboard looks like. Okay, so I have a bunch of tests running in that build. Let me switch back to the build tab itself. You can see some things are running, and I already have some failures. So let's actually evaluate one of those failures. I think we're having some Wi-Fi slowness problems as well. Oh, okay, yeah, this is a fun one. See, look, 503, temporary service unavailable. This is a common thing that I've ran into when doing this performance type of automation. My website currently can't support the load I just threw at it. There's a great demonstration here. Okay? And now things are like really not responding. Here we go, they're starting to drop off. What I've done here is I've configured some things within my desired capabilities to be able to execute these tests over a certain period of time. I'm checking for those navigational points, right? The title property, I'm making sure I'm getting landed in the right spot. Okay, now things are done. So I switch back over to the dashboard. We can see some of the failures. Oh, 31 failures. I was hoping for full 150 green, but no, that didn't happen. So I want to evaluate what my failures are and how to figure out what I'm using. So I go into the analytics. So this is sort of my daily work. I come in here and I can see the analytics to flow through what I'm looking at to figure out what I need to see and figure out what failed. What I'm wanting to demonstrate here is my execution of my job that was running. I have 100% parallelization. So if things would have ran a little bit faster, it wouldn't have taken the 2 minutes, whatever. My website choked and it wasn't responding well. But what I'm demonstrating here is the ability to do the parallelization. And with that parallelization, the concurrency, right, you have to deal with these weird anomalies. Okay. Let me switch back. Okay, so let me get back into here. That's my fun live demo that sort of worked, and then I test myself. And I want to go right here, this one. Okay, so that was the demo. Remember the goal in 2014? 10,000 tests in 10 minutes? I have been able to achieve that. I'm actually executing about 13,000 test cases, 13,000 plus test cases in those time frames. How do we achieve that? I'll get to that in a minute. So here are some of the stats. I have 24K plus test cases in my suite that I'm executing. It's covering 19 different applications. I have a total execution time of about 5 hours. It's a little bit different from 10 minutes to 5 hours. Anybody curious about that? We can talk about it. In a 1-month period, I was able to execute 2.2 million plus test cases with 99.02% pass rate. And I've been able to get it up to 1,300 plus test cases running in concurrency, parallelization. So with all of that being said, so here's the stats from my Caesar snapshot from 4/27. You can see here that if I wouldn't have ran all of this stuff in parallel, it would have taken me, right down at the bottom, 13 days to run everything if they just ran back-to-back over time. Future that I'm moving into. Performance. I'm sort of already doing a performance test with the load that I can throw at the application, but I want to be able to bring in the tool sets that's specific to like performance style testing. I'm also very interested and intrigued by the security world, and I have wanted to get into that realm. So I'm looking at figuring out ways to bring in security testing into the automation framework to do it there. And then I'm also looking at bringing in visual validation. Appley Tools is a great company out there that's also offering a solution for visual validation. I have a new project coming online, so there's going to be a new whole application that I'm needing to bring in. I'm really hoping to be able to use the visual validation in there because it's a brand new app and we want to be able to check the page layout type of stuff. So tips. Keep things small and self-sufficient in your test. Random order execution has been great for us because it's finding those weird anomalies. We don't have dependencies within our application, and if test 1 runs before test 2, we can find those problems, various things like that. We have multiple levels of parallelization, and what that means is we can run those 19 applications all at once. We can run them one by one. We can run them through a set. We can run our test suites all at once or through a set. So we have these several layers of parallelization from applications, test suites, to individual test cases. I highly recommend you look at the desired capabilities that are offered out there. If you're familiar with it or not familiar with it, make sure you get familiar with it because tweaking your desired capabilities to run at this level of concurrency is very valuable. And you just don't want to accept the defaults necessarily when running through Sauce Labs. You need to customize them specifically for your needs, and they're going to be different. I really watch the total execution time and figure out what's running for long periods of time and set my max duration that's allowed through Sauce Labs low so that I can start refactoring those long-winded end-to-end test cases. Track stats over time so you know where you're coming from, where you're going, and how you're getting there. I love watching the video playbacks because I'm a geek, automation geekiness, right? Wow, look at that, I got it running, this is awesome. I love it. Hey, it's broken. Yeah, it's not. Okay? Stay focused on your tunnels. If you're using tunnels, they have been my nemesis as well. That, if you notice my stat, was 99.02%. The majority of my flakiness has been coming in from the tunnels. And then addition to that is the application performance problems because when I throw the load at it, it can't handle it. Okay? Oh, the very last one, I'm sure you read it. Oh, I didn't put it on there. Have fun with what you do. If you come at it at a negative perspective or whatever, if you just come at it, it's okay to laugh about yourself and it's okay to laugh about your mistakes. So I'm Mike Millgate. I'll be around. Feel free to ask me questions. If you guys have questions right now, I'll be willing to take them. Yes?
So, what
Wait. You want the microphone?
Do I?
Yeah.
Hello. So what happens when you want to increase your throughput? And so you want to increase concurrency, so one way to do that is to increase the number of VMs, right?
Mm-hmm.
What happens when that number is higher than the SLA for the application? Like in your example, what if only 50 users are expected to be able to hit that at any given point in time?
Okay, so the way we would handle that, to me, that falls into the performance category. So if we say that we should only be able to support 50, we would be running it at 50. If we start to see failures there, we would start to roll back that service level agreement. So our particular applications, they're referential government data that we supply out to the medical industry, and we use that type of information to pass it out. So we have an individual performance group that we use, but this automation is starting to help with that performance. Sure. This is a very long-winded answer to your question.
Well, they kind of inform each other,
yeah, right. So we're using our automation. Actually, our automation, even back in the QTP days, was used to test performance because we didn't have a performance team, because we were sort of throwing that same sort of load. So that's kind of where it's at. I don't think I answered your question accurately, but when we have more time, let's chat about it afterwards. Sorry, we'll get to it.
So with your testing,
yeah.
See, now you've got 10,000 concurrent tests. How are you getting that data fed back into your CI loop, right? So
yeah.
I could run all that testing, and that's great. But then how am I associating that testing, that run of 10,000 test scripts, back to an individual story? Have you guys done any work in that area or not?
Yeah. So I didn't talk about our CI in our CI pathway. We use Jenkins for our CI pathway, and so our application will build through the normal build processes that happen, and that will be triggering off our automation smoke suite. So part of the categorization, so the 10,000 in 10 minutes, they're considered our smoke suites, and they execute really fast, right? And all that data is collaborated and consolidated back into our Jenkins environment. So we use Jenkins to report that back. Then we have the capabilities within our test cases to map tests back to individual stories if we need to. But to be honest, I'm not a big fan of that, because the requirement traceability stuff, for me, doesn't provide me the value. It's more of a business entity, and the business entity requests it, but they haven't given us a good feedback on what they want for it. So we don't necessarily tie test cases to user stories. Does that make sense? Okay. Anything else?
You know, I'm going to have
Are we over time?
You guys, can you grab in a break? I have to pull the plug so you guys have time to eat. I'm sorry, but thank you, Mike.
Thank you.